Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of A New Go of New Home Sales. I'm your host, Anya Chrysanthemum, and joining me today, the legendary Myers Barnes. Myers, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
I'm excited to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you and share with your audience.
So before we get things going, for those people who may not be familiar with who you are, if you don't mind telling us your life story, how did you get to where you are now, and what is it that you do now?
Well, I've spent my life in home building. I mean, or certainly, let's just say my entire working life has been in home building, which has been a long life, I'm happy to say. But got started in construction, actually, concrete construction. And rolled along with that and rolled along with it, started in there, I hate to say, but will say, in the very first real estate downturn in 1973, we had a company, concrete construction company. And that was one of the first real estate downturns because that was the Arab oil embargo, and stayed with it until the second downturn, which was 1980. And that was when the interest rates were 18.6%. When Mr. Carter and Mr. Volcker screwed up the economy so badly that we had to go to 18%. Well, both of those downturns were completely unavoidable. But nonetheless, I was going through it and seeing it, and in the construction industry, maybe not in real estate sales. And then in 1989, I jumped into real estate sales. And of course, in 1990, there was a third recession. I missed it, though, because I was so stupid. I didn't realize what a recession really, truly was and how bad it was. To me, it was just what the market was. So I prospered and did really well. And it was a quick ascent for me into this business. The moment that I jumped into real estate, I had an extremely successful career. And within about a 5-year span, I wrote my first book, Closing Strong. Anya, we call it the sun, the moon, the stars, God, however you want to interpret it. But it turned out to be a bestseller. Actually, it sold 23,000 copies in a single day, and that was pre-internet.
Wow.
So the ascent was quick. And then we started writing more books and more books and more books. The business evolved into speaking, and then we hit another downturn. And when we hit that downturn, which was really, I mean, you got to go to 9/11, things like that. And, those were downturns that occurred. But that's when we really broke into consulting. That overtook speaking. However, we were still speaking about 100 days a year, traveling 250 days a year, and did that for, man, it's hard to believe, for about 15 consecutive years, traveled that much.
You must have a few frequent flyer miles and hotel points there, huh?
I can go to the moon and back. No, actually, I give those away. I give them away to my son and give them away to church and just give the miles away. Because truthfully, a vacation for me is not flying anywhere. So I don't use them. It's the last thing I want to do is step on a plane. And then I got a really good vacation with COVID. Which we all did. We came of age with Zoom, right? Zoom would not be invented. I mean, it was invented, but it wouldn't have been popularized. It was, they say, bad situations are the necessity of all invention. Now we're Zooming. So I spend about 90% of my time like this, in front of a camera, in front of this monitor here. Actually, off to the side here, we just installed a new camera for quick YouTube and social media videos yesterday. And so we'll be amping that into progression. But I've been fortunate, written 9 books and been all over the country through all the years and seeing this. So, it's been a blessed career. That's pretty much it. That's the long story short story of it all.
And so, Myers, do you now still consult, speak? What's the biggest concentration of your business now?
I'd say the biggest concentration of my time is consulting and online education. We're constantly speaking, giving talks like this, The talks are shorter in duration because trainings used to be pre-COVID was I'd come in for 2 days, 8-hour days. Okay, well, obviously you're not going to do that with Zoom. So it's just a more concise 1 hour, hour and a half increments, more repetition. And we go that way with the speaking. Now we'll be at IBS again and everybody. So, longer talks are coming, but it's still a more concentrated approach. And spend a load of time consulting with builders. And here's our consulting message is I really don't care how many units you sell. I care how much money you make, what your margin's going to be. Like, here's an example. Got a builder in Florida right now, and it's kind of, he said, as we're all saying, what's the market doing? It's decelerating. I don't like the words correcting. I don't like the words downturn. I don't like the turns on the cusp of a bubble. I don't like the things of pause. I just go, look, it's just a deceleration. And it's proven right now where we decelerated to right before pre-COVID, which was red hot. Now, what we were in the last 2 years was white hot. This is now red hot. And so people are going, well, there's a little pause. And I go, well, of course, the history of real estate, ups and downs and ups. We've had 11 good years, 2 of them white hot. But it's decelerating, but it's the Florida builder tells me, he said, yeah, so it's decelerating. So we're at, some pre-COVID levels with appointments and with everything else. But, still based on what we're building with the ramp up in prices, our profits are greater than they were before. And so, it's like this, should I wait? You hear that all the time, right? Should we wait? Let's wait for the rates to go down.
Let's wait for the price to go down.
What?
Let's wait for the price to go down, right?
Yeah, let's wait for the price to go down. Let's wait for the rates to go down. And you go, well, in 2021, it was called the biggest real estate market of 51 years. 51 years, the biggest real estate market. It was also called the lowest interest rates of 51 years. So the people that say they're going to wait for any of it to go down, you go, it'll never go down to a 51-year rate. It'll be decades before the rates ever go down. So you got to get that out on the table. And that's an objection handling strategy right now for somebody that tells you, wait for the rates and go, well, they were the lowest in 51 years in 2000. They're never coming down.
Yeah. And Myers, you're so right. I mean, you're talking about the Florida builder who's starting to see the slowdown. And we've seen that on website traffic, with website traffic, that's kind of like the first indication. And then it typically translates into foot traffic. So April was 4th consecutive month of traffic decreasing. And I mean, it's decreasing substantially to, you're right, we're down to that COVID level. When the COVID first hit, it was kind of like, oh, a little pause, what's happening right now? So it's interesting to see how the business is going to be affected, because we're certainly in for, as you said, not a correction, but a slowdown. And so that can be, challenging time for a lot of home builders. So I imagine that you're probably been busy in the last few months, few weeks. I know as a tech company, we've started to receive a lot more phone calls now suddenly, because home builders are saying like, oh my gosh, we actually got to do something now. It's not just, put the sign in the yard and, you have 10 people showing up saying, me, pick me. We may actually put some effort into selling homes.
Well, I think it's healthy. It's been 11 straight years, 2 of them being that white hot period. And here's what the Fed's job is, if people are wondering why the rates. The Fed's job is to break something. They've got to break it. Like Volcker did in 81. He broke home buying by raising rates to 18.6%. A little drastic for today, because that would tank the economy, but they're going to keep raising it until they break this inflation on housing or stock market, all this stuff of inflation. And, but is it, I'd pose this question when people say it's, people are telling me they're pausing or they're, waiting or whatever. And I'd go, actually, I question if it's the prospect or if it's the salesperson.
Bingo, Myers. So I was just talking to a sales manager in DFW, and even a market as hot as DFW, he said like, oh, we're seeing a slowdown, like it's a drastic slowdown. And another thing that they said was that their average age of their salesperson is 23 years old. 23 years old. So they have never sold or been in an environment in their adult life where they've seen interest rates going up and needing to actually talk about the payment and rising rates and the urgency of, hey, if you wait, the rates are going to continue to go up. This is what's going to happen. So I think that a lot of people who've entered this career over the last, even 10 years, if you think about it, we've had a really, really
had 11 good years.
Right, exactly. It's been just up, and arguably you didn't have to have super sales skills in order to be successful, right? In an environment where there's a shortage of homes, especially shortage that to the degree that we've experienced, and there's such an urgency for people to find a home after COVID, especially, that they realize the importance of having their own place, and how important home really is for all of us. So now, okay, we've been selling. And so I am a little bit concerned about the morale, quite frankly, of newer salespeople who have not been through the downturn before, who've never seen this before, who are used to being the superstar. And now they're in a position where maybe they're hearing, no, I'm not going to buy right now. So that is my worry, that they may get discouraged right away. And they may think that, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not as good as I thought. And because, as you can imagine, builders probably have not been spending as much time, money, or effort on training their sales staff as they normally would in a downturn. Because in a downturn, it really takes a special type of person to overcome a lot of those objections that people are having. So let's talk a little bit about the objections, because I really want our listeners to walk away knowing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that it is, real estate is a cyclical. As you said, you've been through so many ups and downs through your career. And it seems like every time there was a downturn, you were able to reinvent yourself and your business.
Yeah.
So I think it is definitely an opportunity for salespeople to shine, but you do need to learn positioning in order to be able to overcome some of those things. So let's talk about interest rates specifically, because I think that is probably number one thing that we're going to be dealing with. I was just checking out Yahoo Finance. There's an article that said that, for new home shoppers, they're really being outpriced out of the market, because in addition to rising interest rates, which if you look at, 3.5% to 5.5%, or actually higher now, closer to 6%, it's a increase in a monthly payment of about 30% from last year. Mm-hmm. But for new construction, it's more like a 50% increase in monthly payment, because in addition to the interest rate increase, we've also experienced price increases because of all those other issues that we're having. So if it's 20% increase in price plus interest rate increase, now you're up to 50% higher monthly payment. And I think for a lot of salespeople, it can be psychologically impossible to sell and to show value in their home if a year ago your payment was X and now it's 50% higher. How can I possibly say it's a good value? How can I possibly sell you this home in good conscience when I know a year ago I sold it at this? And I think that could be a huge challenge. So I would love to hear your take on this, and how would you overcome this?
I've got so many strategies. It's crazy, but I'll reduce it to a few and let you just say keep going.
Yes, let's do a couple of strategies so that way when somebody's encountering that, maybe let's talk about interest rate strategy as well as price increase strategy, so that we at least have something to say when we encounter that.
Brian Tracy has this great quote, and I'll probably repeat it twice because I don't want anybody to miss it. It's about your mindset. Okay. And here's what it is. He says, it's not as bad as you think it is. It's just as bad as you think it is.
That's a good one.
Because see, really, it's not as bad as you think it is, but it is as bad as you think it is. And we know that most of our thinking is negative. And we know that the rest of the world is negative. And we know that the media is coming at us from negative, because the rule with the media is this: if it don't bleed, it's not a lead. Because no good news sells. It's only the bad news that sells. And so you got the media hounding it. You got your sales. You got weak sales associates going to other sales associates and saying how bad it is. And it's not bad. It's as bad as you think it is, but it's not as bad as you really think that it is. Because historically speaking, the rate, and I checked it today, was 5.36. So that being said, historically speaking, this is like one of the best times in history to buy. Today is one of the best times in history to buy. Now, we know June 3rd, they're going back to the Fed, and there'll be another tick. So I would certainly say there should be urgency. But the urgency, watch this, urgency is an emotion, Anya, and you can't, if you don't feel it yourself, you don't feel it, you can't forward it. And so the buyer can't feel it because you're not forward it, because you're not feeling it. But really, it is a tremendous time to buy. Why? Because they just said inflation could be anywhere from 8 to 11%, right? The rate's 5.36. Well, the rate is lower than inflation, which means the money's free. And then the other thing that we don't count on is this, is that, and this is statistically proven, clearly 1/3 of the buying decision, except for where I live,
In paradise.
No, it's a cash buyer.
Yeah.
Cash buyer. Like, I'll give you an example. 1/4 mile from the ocean, a house listed this week. It's a 1/4 mile from the ocean, listed for 1.6 million. There were 4 immediate offers, and 2 of them were 100,000 plus overpriced.
Yep. And just
okay, it's cash.
You guys, so you don't know, Myers lives in Outer Banks, North Carolina, which is my favorite place for vacationing. So no wonder. Yeah.
But then you can go, in the section where I live, and it takes more financing. So I say this about markets: it's no one national market per se. It's lots of little pocket markets. Like, there's oceanfront markets, pure cash. Nobody cares about interest. Then, you can live, off the ocean, and there's financing that's involved, and so people, are addressing it. But the best thing I can tell you is, again, historical data is that, historically speaking, remember, these were the lowest rates in 51 years. Historically speaking, 5 3/4 or 5 1/4 or 5 1/2 is an astounding rate. Now, but 1/3 of the buying decision is based on finance. So you can go, well, what's the other, 67%? And I go, well, let's just cover this. We know 1/3 of the buying decision is based on finance, period, end of the conversation. And so if you can't cover finance with somebody, when I say cover finance and show them the relationship, that historically speaking, this is great. And then if you don't know how to explain the tax advantages that come with it, and go, and this is your tax advantage, the rate starts coming right back down and eroding to almost nothing, because inflation is outpacing the rate. And then you take out the tax advantages, truly the money is like free. You got to be able to make the payment to get the free money, but nonetheless, at the end of the year, what have you paid? Nothing. But you've got to lock in quick. and you got to lock in now. And so people that think they're pausing at 5.25, they're going to be shocked at 7.
Yes. Yes. And I
It's
think that
still
is
at 7 is going to be historically great.
yes. And I mean, in a lot of countries outside of US, like I know I have family in Russia and they're in double digits and they've been in double digits, you know, and it's just normal. And like you said, you know, in the 80s, I mean, our parents, they've paid, you know, 18%. I mean, that's crazy, right? If you say 18%, that sounds crazy, but that's the reality. And hopefully we don't get to 18%. But I think one thing is certain is that you're right. It's going to go up. Just how high it's going to go, it's a question, but it's probably going to go up and stay up for a little bit before it comes down. And that a little bit can be a long time. So to show the current rate versus say 7%, or even showing a 0.5% increase is huge. And that gives you such a natural urgency that you can't even make up, right? That urgency is so helpful in selling. And sometimes we have to create and find ways to create urgency, but now you have that natural urgency, which is huge. And I think right now we also have a lot of tools that you can use with your customers. Like you don't have to calculate it by hand. Like I had to do it back in the day, you know, calculate by hand your back end, front end ratio, like to show. Like now we have those online calculators that you can build a house with your customer online, pick the options that they are interested in, show them what it looks like. So you're getting that emotional buy-in. And then you can also plug in the current rate and show them what the payment looks like. And then the same moment you can change that to say, hey, if the interest rate moves just 0.25%, just 0.5% or 1%, this is the impact on your monthly payment. So that's going to be naturally your avenue to close the sale.
You know, an operative word you used is show.
Mm-hmm.
Show means see.
Yes.
Okay. Behavioral scientists, and this was done in the downturn of 2008, and they said, you know, they were looking for tools, and they said, you know, how do we influence a buyer when we're in a downturn? And they said 89% of believability in a sales presentation is what a prospect will see. 10% is what they hear. 1% involves the other senses. So, you know, as they say, seeing is believing. You can't talk this through. You've got to show them. So, yeah, I know you guys have a tool that will allow them to calculate as long with their options and everything. And, you know, there's a gazillion apps that will do it for you. And if you're not the financial expert, then get them in front of the lender. Mm-hmm. And let them explain it. But I would certainly say you've got to understand finance. So if I were a builder, I'd go, your least expensive education would be get your lender to come in and explain the ratio of finance to this whole purchase. And they've got to become experts, but they've got to be convinced, because you can't be convincing if you're not convinced. And you can't be believable if you're not a believer. But this is a good time to be buying. You know, and anybody that says, I'm waiting for the rates to come down, I'm going, okay, simultaneously the prices are going to go up. Well, I'm waiting for the prices to come down. I go, well, then simultaneously, look, you're stuck in this double. You know what time is the best time to buy? When you're ready.
5 years ago.
Well, no, when you're ready. Like my son's getting ready to buy a home in Austin.
Oh yeah, that's a hot market too.
He's looking at, well, the market hasn't changed there. It's still just white hot and keep accelerating. And, you know, you can say, well, did he miss a mark by the rate? And it's like, no, because he wasn't ready at that moment in time. They had just moved there. They were still testing, do we want to be here forever and a day after living in New York City for, you know, the last 23 years. And so, you know, it's like right now, the mental shift has occurred. And that's when people make a decision, when there's a mental as well as an emotional shift, but it's got to be that way with the salesperson. So get your finance down. The other thing is people are going to come into your model. And I got to make this suggestion. You need 2 sales processes today. What do you mean 2? Well, you got to have one, obviously, for the online person that is coming in through an OSC. And you set an appointment and there's a handoff strategy, right? This is all part of the OSC process, handoff strategy.
Yep.
And then how do you handle that buyer? And then you've got another process that goes, because let's just say you're in Florida or even in Texas, you got as many people walking in as you do coming in by appointment. So you got to have a walk-in process, because the walk-in process is uniquely different than the OSC process. And you got to be able to shift between the two. So, you know, and the whole thing that all people come in via the internet, and I'd go 98% start there. That's a proven number, you know, and Google says that the average buyer spends somewhere between 3 months and 1 year, 76% researching online before they come on site. I dig it, I buy it. Nonetheless, a lot of people still just walk in. And so you've got to have two processes. How does this online process work, which is fundamental? What's your new home sales walk-in process? But also, what's your OSC process? What's your appointment process? Because it's two different processes that you've got to be working. Am I making sense with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally different. And because customer expectation is going to be different when they meet finally with that person after already speaking with the OSC. And if you start with them where you would start with somebody who just walked through the door, I'm going to be real annoyed and I'm going to walk out.
Yeah. And so, but here's what's going to happen. Let's say you've got that walk-in buyer, okay, but it could also apply to the OSC. And the OSC and the on-site must be co-joined in their presentations. But people are going to test, and people are going to say, I think I'm going to wait. And this is what you have to be able to just knock them over with a couple of things here. And I'm going to make a suggestion with this word. I'm going to revert back to a book I wrote, Reach the Top, which is a vintage book. And it said, what do you do when somebody comes in and asks you how the market is and it's not a good market? You just say one word. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. How's the market? Tell me how things are going. Oh, it's unbelievable. Now, unbelievable is an interesting word because it could be unbelievably good or unbelievably bad, but you're telling the truth, right?
Yes, I like that.
Unbelievable. And you got to say it all with that same degree of enthusiasm. Unbelievable. What do you mean? It's an unbelievably good time to be buying a new home. Interest rates are historically, I immediately go into the benefit of buy now. But if you, here's where the pause comes, because the salesperson may not know what to say or forgot what to say. And you have to explain it away, and you explain it away with it's unbelievable. Or watch this. It could be incredible. It's incredible, incredibly good, incredibly bad. Who cares? It's just incredible. And, you know, but it is an incredible time to buy, historically low rates. You couldn't be here at a better time. And the truth of the matter is, here's the thing, whether it's white hot or red hot, and whether there's fewer, you know, the number of buyers still outpaces the number of homes that are available.
Absolutely.
It's still outpacing.
Yep. We're still on a super high demand and low inventory market. So yeah, it's still, I mean, we're still positioned really well to sell the homes. It just may take more effort.
It's going to take a little more effort. And it's going to take something else that's been forgotten skill. It's called follow-up.
Yep.
And what do I mean by follow-up? I'm hearing now too, and you probably do as well, about the priority list or the intent list. And they go, oh my goodness, my priority list, people are falling off the list. And then we go, look, what we have to realize with the list is this. They weren't just on your list. They were on 6 or 8 or 10 lists.
Yes, this is the biggest fallacy. Yes, home builders, they always think like, oh, this is my prospect. They're only looking at me. Like, no, they're looking at 10 other people.
Yeah, think of it this way. Watch this. It's like they're having marital affairs.
Yeah.
You know, you think they're locked into you, and it's like, oh, no, I'm still free game out here.
Yep.
And I'm not locked in. I'm on 10 different lists, or I'm on 6 different lists. And so you go, well, the people have fallen off my list. And I go, no, the list probably wasn't managed. Meaning you have to follow up with someone on a list. And what do you mean follow up? I mean, you know, like follow up, initiate. This thing makes outbound as well as receiving inbound.
No.
Yes, watch this. Holy crap, the phone's ringing, and it's like, no, 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 ring the phone, ring the phone. And there's many ways of following up, and I still suggest you should be picking up the phone and making personal contact, but you should be making, if you have a list, you should have had weekly. When I say weekly, not WEEKLY follow up, but I mean, have weekly, but not WEAKLY follow up. But you got to have weekly follow up. And did you manage your list? So what they did was they fell off your list, but went on somebody else's list. And whose list did they go on? Whoever was paying attention.
Yes. So it's funny, actually, today on LinkedIn, I posted something about follow up. Salespeople don't follow up because they don't know what to say oftentimes. Like I remember being in sales, and I think that was the biggest thing, like, I got to follow up, right? And it's like, what do I say? But now, again, going back to interactive online tools, we have the tools now where you can see exactly where that buyer is in the process. So if you can see that they've selected home site 73 and they have priced out your Corsica floor plan with, that extra, outdoor kitchen and whatever else, now your conversation is going to be a lot different than, hey, I'm just following up, which I hate when people do that. Don't say I'm just following up, just checking in. I'm not just checking in. Why are you calling? Right?
Well, that's good that you say that, because when I suggest a follow-up, I go, here's how you begin it. You go, the reason I'm calling is.
Yep.
The reason I'm reaching out is. The reason I'm reaching out is the Fed meets next week. And that means they're calling for another 0.5% bump in the rate, which means it's going to impact the interest. We have a week now that we can lock in 5.35%. We can lock that in today. But if it goes up another point, you do realize that could be another 130,000 over the course of a 30-year loan.
Bravo. I think you just gave salespeople reason to follow up. So every single one of you who's listening, pick up the phone, and that is your script.
It is your script. And, but you've got to, here's the thing with the script. It's really funny. I saw a friend of mine today posted, she saw Dave Matthews last night in Tampa. She said, next show is in South Carolina. And I know her. And she follows Dave Matthews about 5 different journeys every year. She's done this for 10 years. She's seen this guy like 50 times. Do you know he sings the same song every time? Which means he's working off of a script, because a song is a script, right? What's the problem with the current politician we have in office? They can't follow the script. They won't stay on the teleprompter. Okay. But everybody works off of a script, but you got to practice that script and go, what is the actual amount? 130? Is it 130? Because if it goes into the 1,000,006, you could be looking at 240. So, or if it goes, if it's 500, it's just going to be a different number. But here's what it's going to go up to. If it goes up one more point, just one more point, it'll go up to this amount over the next 30 years. So are you going to spend another 130,000 on the same home?
Yep. So this is where, again, like you said, saying versus showing. So you can call them with that and then follow up with a cost estimate for a home that they're interested in, showing current rate versus that 0.5 point increase, so they can see what that payment looks like. Yeah,
if they've got your tool, then obviously it's visual. It's plug and play. Send it. If they're not fortunate enough to have your tool, then it's just, I don't care how you do it.
You Google it, right? I'm your mortgage calculator. You can,
but you can show it, and I don't care. Just type it, and this is what it's going to go up to, and then continue to call. When a day and a half later. Why? Because I'm following up. You've had some time to churn this, process it, shouldn't we don't say, where do you stand or what do you think? Never say the words, what do you think? Because if you say, what do you think, it implants that they should think. And so they'll go, well, we're still thinking. You just go, so what do we need to do? What's our next step together? When can we get together? And you're going for the close, which, see, again, we haven't had to close the last 2 years.
Mhm.
We built lists. And so it goes back to learning the art and the science of closing as well. What is a close? Concluding. You know, I'm trying to conclude. What are you trying to conclude? Your process, whether it's the OSC process that you're working, or whether it's a walk-in process, but you're trying to conclude it. Why? Because we know that regardless, either one, you know, you're going to have a meeting with them. You're going to meet them and greet them and so forth. Then you're going to qualify them or orient them, you know, find out where they are, you know, then you're going to give them overviews, which we all do. And after that, you have to get them to pick something. What do you mean? Pick a floor plan, pick a price.
Yep.
You may not, you know, the difference is right now with it decelerating, you might even have to get them to pick something like a home site, because we're not, all the houses that you had that were ready to go on particular ones, they didn't even get a choice. Now they get a choice.
Yep.
So you get them to pick something, and, you know, and after that, you got to be able to overcome any objections they have, and then you close. But the close is a natural ending to the process. And it doesn't matter whether it's the OSC process or the walk-in process, but close, conclude, have it in your mind that this is where I'm heading today. But don't get paralyzed and frozen with, golly, everybody's slowing down. It's not a great time, you know, because we saw 3% and now it's 5%. And, you know, I can't justify this. And I go, okay, if you can't justify it up here, you can't justify it out there.
Yes.
And that's where the turnaround comes, is your mental shift and go. But yeah, there's enough here right now that you've got all the reason in the world to pick up a phone and follow up just within, in, I don't know, 10 days, the Fed meets. Yep. So over the next 10 days, I call every person on the planet Earth, you know, and present.
Now, Myers, you mentioned something. So you're going to go through these steps. You're going to overcome objections and close. So for people who have been in this industry for only a few years, and maybe they didn't have to really deal with a lot of objection overcoming, I think, and for newer salespeople, I remember when I was new, when somebody threw an objection at me, I was like, oh my God, they hate it. They don't want to buy it. And then as I got better, I actually welcomed objections, because I knew that objections is actually a buying signal, because they're thinking through it. That means they're considering it. And so can you talk just a little bit about objection overcoming, maybe attack it from the mental standpoint, or, you know, what's your standpoint on objections? Because I think that's a big one.
Well, first of all, what you just said is highly advanced, meaning welcoming objections.
Yep.
And do you welcome an objection? And I go, yeah. Why? Because an objection is not an objection. An objection is merely a request for additional information.
I love that. Yes.
So somebody comes in and says, golly, the interest rates are freaking me out. I'm not a highly freakable person, but this is freaking my freak, these interest rates, and I go, okay, all right. What they're really saying, watch this, it's not an objection. What they're saying is, can you justify to me these interest rates? Can you justify to me why I seemingly might be paying more, but I could be coming out ahead based on, so they're just saying, justify it to me. The houses are more expensive. I wish I would have bought. I love it when somebody says that. For me, I immediately reply with, well, Anya, you're not going to let that happen again, are you?
Love that.
Are you going to let that happen again? I mean, my goodness gracious, you've already seen the rates go up. You've already seen the pricing go up. And now you're saying, but see, they're still in your office saying that, which means you're interested. So people are just looking for justification. And that's what your job is to justify.
Yes.
And explain to them And this is what it's, are you overcoming? Why don't we just rephrase it to, you're just going to re-educate them as to why they should own. And so that's how I approach it. But again, it still comes down to mental. Everything is mental in this game here. I mean, you hate to use sports analogies, but yet they apply so aptly. Like if you followed football, there was the great game where Tom Brady, with minutes in the game, has to come back 23 points. Minutes. And in the history of the sport, that's never been done before. Well, he knew that statistic.
Yep.
In the history of the sport, it's never been done. But he didn't believe it. He just said, I can do this. We can do this. And so they did that mentally. See, where the mind goes, energy flows.
So many good quotes today, Myers. I love it.
So, can you do your mindset? Which would, if we have time, can I cover one other thing?
Yes, absolutely.
I call this the 3 M's. Now we teach a long process, but I'm going to give you a really short, abbreviated process. And it will come down for whether you're working the OSC or whether you're working the walk-in process. But the 3 M's is this: mindset, motivation, methodology. All right. So it starts with, I've got a prospect. They're either going to walk in today or they're going to be an appointment today, but I've got a prospect that's going to come in. Okay. And remember this, if they weren't interested, they wouldn't be there.
Yes.
They can come up and pause all they want, but they still came in the door.
Yes. Assume the sale.
That's it. Because why would you come if you weren't interested?
Yep.
It's not going to happen.
To buy a house.
They're there. Now, they're going to throw it out because it's very natural that I'm going to test you with, we're just wondering if this is really a good time. All right, remember, reframe. Okay, all right, they're not objecting. They're merely asking me a question. They're giving me a second chance, to talk to them, to speak them, and to educate them, because they wouldn't be here unless they were interested. So that shifts it now. So comes in with your mindset first. Nobody comes in unless they're buying, period.
Yep.
They're certainly not, they're not coming in for decorating ideas in today's, I'll go to house. I'll go wherever it is, but I don't really need to come in for a decorating idea today, which you and I heard, pre-internet days. And so that's my mindset. My mindset is they're all coming in to buy, regardless of what they say. What I have to be prepared for is and all objections are predictable. As predictable as the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. They're very predictable. We're on a little pause. Wow, I haven't heard that one before. Did you go to objection school? Because wow, that's no, you've already heard it. Why are you ambushed by it?
Right.
So you shift the objection up here before you can shift it in their mind. Okay, so mindset, they're all coming in to buy. Motivation. Motivation's an interesting word. It derives from 2 words. It's called motive and action. Okay, so I can give a highly motivational talk, and I have. And people come up and they say, gosh, I wish my child was here. Do you think you could motivate them? And I'd go, probably not. Why? Because I'm watching you. But you go, look, you've got to determine what somebody's motive is. What's driving them. Like, I only have one motivation. People say, what caused you to jump in a plane for 15 years, 250 days a year? And I go, my motive. What's my motive? My motive was to build a financial wall around my family that no one or anything could ever penetrate. That's it. It's my motive. All right. Now I got a strong motive to build that wall. All right. So therefore, since I've got the motive, then I take action. That's motivation, but you got to determine the motive. And so what you have to do, this is why we highly qualify or go through a process of discovery with a prospect, is to determine what's their motive? What's driving them? Because once you find out their motive, then you change your presentation to what they're looking for, not what you're trying to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And that will cause people to take action because you found out what their motive was.
Mm-hmm.
So
And can I add here,
please.
the reason that I'm renting now and I don't want to rent anymore is not a real motive. You got to dig deeper and find out why. Why is it, why were they renting for all these years and was okay, and suddenly they're done renting? What is the real motive? It's not, I want to buy a house. Buying a house is not a motive.
No, and you know what? That's a good point. It's like, because, you know, well, I always tell people, here's another cute one. You're going to pay a mortgage regardless. What do you mean? You're always going to pay a mortgage for the rest of your life. No, I rent. No, you're paying a mortgage, not yours, but somebody else's.
Yep.
So you're paying a mortgage. Why don't we just shift it to your mortgage?
Mm-hmm.
Because they hit the right time. You know, you could say, why is my son in the market now versus before? They left New York out of COVID after 23 years. That was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Then they spent half a year traveling between California and Austin and settled on Austin. Now they settle in Austin and they're renting. They're not going to buy something right away. And then they want to be there for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Child in school, do this stuff. Is this where we want to be? So now's their time.
Mm-hmm.
So what shifted was they go, okay, we could live here. All right, so but you missed the interest. You missed all the stuff. And go, no, now's the perfect time.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the market. And, you know, you just have to find out what you just said. You know, why are you moving now?
Yep.
Suddenly? Why would you be moving now? Because it's their time. Don't overcomplicate it. It's their time. They wouldn't be in front of you if they weren't interested.
Yep. So dig deeper. If somebody says, oh, we're renting, don't stop there. Keep going, asking why.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, renting makes sense. I'd use the true story myself. And I go, yeah, I get it. You know, my son's been renting and now suddenly he's interested and here's why. So what's your motivation?
That's a good one.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Use a third-party testimonial and then shift it to what's your reason,
Love that.
you know, for wanting to move, and you know, let them explain it, and then you present their motive, and you just keep going with, well, you're here at the perfect time. Golly, are you here at a great time?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there was a movie, and I'm not sure if you'll remember it, and a lot of people won't, but there was a movie in 1999. It's called Fight Club.
Yep, with Brad Pitt.
Yeah, Fight
Yep,
Club. All right. And he started it off with Fight Club. And for anybody who didn't see it, it was a club that people went to fight, you know, and it was so against the law. And they were meeting in these obscure places and beating the jeebers out of one another. But it started off and Brad Pitt's up like this, arms to his waist. And he said, all right, let's talk about the rules of Fight Club. There's 10 rules. He said, rule number 1, don't talk about Fight Club. Rule number 2, never talk about Fight Club. And then he went through the other rules. Okay, what in a decelerating market, what's the rule? Rule number 1, never talk about the market.
Market's unbelievable.
Rule number 2, never talk about the market. You know, just come up with you're here at an unbelievable time. You're here at an incredible time. Couldn't be better with it, but you don't talk about it. People want you to talk about it. But the problem is if you go, yeah, we've noticed, you know, a little bit of a downturn, and in your mind you're going, oh crap, not again. Oh my. And you've given up emotionally. And when you give up emotionally, see, the average presentation's over in the first 3 minutes.
Yep.
Because you get an objection, or it sounds like an objection, and it's like this blow to your emotional solar plexus, and you go, okay, game's over. Well, why did they come in? Because they were waiting to meet you.
Yep. Yeah. So this is where, a lot of millennials are buying homes and a lot of millennials are selling homes to millennials. So if your buyers have never been through the downturn before, this is their first time buying. So they may have heard that, oh, you missed the interest rates, you missed the low price. So in their mind, they're thinking, oh, all these things happening, it's still good times. So they're looking for that reassurance from you. You as a millennial, maybe you've never sold in those times before. So this is where you have to step up to the plate and be a sales professional and do your homework and think in advance, like, okay, this is going to be an objection I'm going to hear: interest rates, price increases. What are my strategies to answer that? So that, again, you're not going to follow script, by word by word, make it yours, like you said.
Yes.
But be prepared to answer, because they're going to ask you and they're going to test you. And they're going to be ignorant. They're the buyer, right? They're not going to know everything. So it's your job to educate them and to say those things. So yeah, just wanted to throw it out there.
The average millennial hasn't bought a home yet. If you've
Exactly.
only sold one home, you've got more experience than they do.
Yep.
If this is their second home, then I'd go, okay, you still got much more going than they've ever had going with it. But what you just said, is an essence of what we've been talking about, is figure out what your predictable objections are.
Yep.
And if it's a predictable objection, have a predictable reply.
Yes.
Be prepared for it. And then emotionally, and I would, gosh, if you're out there listening to this, just in your mouth, verbalize it, because nobody's going to hear you, but you should be going, it's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. And practice it over and over and over
until you believe it.
And and it's not, it's such an easy business. But here's really the essence of it: is better is an interesting word. Everybody wants for things to get better. Would you agree?
I would say so. It's human nature.
Yeah, you want it to get better, right? Okay, well, whatever better is. I want a better job. I want a better this. I want a better house. I want a better relationship, but I want something better. And I go, well, look, here's the thing. Better is not something you wish for. Better is what you become. Better.
Another great quote.
Okay, so then you go, okay, well, you have to accept responsibility, which means this: things don't get better, you get better. Okay, situations don't improve, you improve. And your circumstances don't change, you change. But that's accepting responsibility and going, you know what, here's all I can tell you is, how is the market? It's great. And you go, why? Because it's the only one you've got. You've got what you've got.
Yep.
So this is the only market you have, and it's all you've got. So it's good. Because, you can't complain about it. Because if you complain about it, then you start explaining it up here, and then this thing will go wild on you. Because Milton said, the mind can make a heaven out of hell or a hell out of heaven. Your choice.
Absolutely.
Don't turn this into something that it's not. It's a good time to be in the market. That's the essence of it, isn't it?
Absolutely is. So back to the 3 M's. We talked about the mindset. We talked about the motivation. Last one you said is methodology. Methodology
means your process, your selling process. And of course, there's the online sales process. Like I saw John at your company made a tweeted, or was it a tweet? No, he's mainly a LinkedIn person.
Yeah, he's a LinkedIn guy. I don't think he tweets.
He needs to, but that's another story. He put a post out today about follow-up and the process and how it's used and everything. And so, he was talking about the process, the selling process. And one of the aspects of it is follow-up, obviously. And the tools that y'all have integrated and that allow the, almost seamless, effortless follow-up to occur. But so we go, okay, so we talk about the methodology meaning, what's my process?
Mhm.
What's my OSC process? What's my walk-in process? And it
Mhm.
has to be a dedicated process. Now, obviously, we teach a process, but I'm not saying it has to be my process on, for a walk-in. I'm not saying that you have to use mine. I go, look, there's other people with processes out there, but pick your process and go, okay, this is my process. This is my methodology. This is how I convert. Because if appointments are down, there's
Mhm.
only one choice, then conversions have to rise.
Yep.
So now it's a matter of conversion. It's no longer a matter of, the marketing department's going to continue to feed you with lead after lead after lead after lead. Okay, now it's up to you to go, okay, I want it to get better. Well, then I've got to get better. So
Mhm.
what are you going to do to get better? What process are you going to incorporate? And do you have an identifiable process? And if you don't, then hurry up, go identify one very quickly. Identify a sales process, but understand we're in a world of two processes now. You and I didn't have that world.
Yep.
We had one world and one world only. It sucked. The energy and the life out of you.
Well, I mean, yeah, it it sucked, but now, yeah. So here's the thing: if you had an excellent salesperson, that like you relied on that excellent salesperson because that was the only choice, right? They couldn't find anything online. So now, in a sense, we don't put as much pressure on our salespeople because we have all those great tools that we can allow the customers to do self-discovery, self-qualification, falling in love with the home, all those things, overcoming objections online. So by the time they get to the salesperson, they're pretty much ready to go. So now, because we have the two sales processes, it's important to pay attention to both. Like you said, with the salespeople, invest in sales training. With online process, make sure you have the tools online to allow people to go through those steps, and show the monthly mortgage calculator so they can plug and play and see all those things. Show them all those things that they can do, so that by the time they get to the person, they've already completed those things and they can do that. And now your salesperson hopefully is ready to go and to overcome any objections they may still have. So that's where you got to invest in both the salespeople and the tools to make it.
Just remember some of these fundamentals that we've talked about. I'd say you'd have to listen to this about 19 times to pull everything that we talked about today, but 89% is an important number. You go 89% of believability is what they see. You have to show rates. If 1/3 of the decision is finance, then should you be a financial expert, or at least a mini expert?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd go, yeah, because it's too big a part of the decision. If you're buying year-round homes, people aren't really cashing year-round homes, and millennials aren't cashing the home. They depend on it. So it's 1/3 of the decision. Better become an expert on it. Not hard. Pick up the phone, talk to your lender, say, I'd like to meet with you. Explain it to me. Explain to me how the tax advantages work. Explain to me how this, so that you can explain to them. Record them and come up with your presentation for it. And remember, all these things are predictable that are going to happen to you. And, and you can just keep this in mind. How's the market? It is great. Why? It's the only one you've got. So shift it. It's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable time. I can't believe you're here, Anya. This is awesome. Let me tell you why this is such a great time. And don't ever go just checking in. You nailed it with that.
Well, thank you. Well, I couldn't think of a better time to end this podcast than with this unbelievable market. So Myers, thank you so much for being on today and sharing all of your knowledge. I mean, as a veteran who's been in industry for so many years, I think there's so much that we can learn from you and the strategies. So if somebody wants to invest in their salespeople and make sure that they're able to overcome these objections, what's the best way to get in touch with you? How can they learn from you?
Of course, you could call.
What's that number?
You know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to give a cell number. and I would say text
Ooh,
me.
okay.
Text me. Okay, it's 252-202-2481. This is going to be not a gazillion people audience in the world. With it, I don't think I'd be, I wouldn't necessarily
There
throw
you
it
go.
out.
You guys got Myers'
Direct line.
direct line. So I'll
Say
make sure
you,
to put it in the show
heard me
notes.
at, the Nugo, webinar, and I'll be sure to get back to you very quickly. And if I can't get back to you, believe me, I'll text you back and say, this is the time I am available. But that would be the easiest way, I'd say, or you can go to the website, do whatever you want. But I just gave you direct access, and you just go
Awesome.
there.
And Myers, can you tell us about your year? Is there anything that you're going to be doing? Any appearances, speaking? Where can we see you?
You can see me online nonstop, which
And what's that website?
It's MBA. I'm sorry, MyersBarnes.com. I was about to give you my email address. Here's my email address. So MBA@MyersBarnes.com. MYERSBARNES.
And I will be sure to link that in the show notes so you guys can get in touch with Myers.
All right. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I feel like I've learned so many new things, and it's been unbelievable.
It has been unbelievable. So then I'll sign out, and we'll talk later. Okay. Thank you
Talk
so
soon.
much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.